it's Dory with Taitlin Studio here. It's the end of the year holiday season, and I've had some requests from some clients to make some random end grain cutting boards, and we're going to be going over that process today. The great thing about this style of cutting board is I can just go to my offcut bin and just go through them and take all the different pieces that I have that I wouldn't necessarily use on another project. Now I'm just taking all separate pieces and setting them out here into the different lengths. I have a good combination of some birch, cherry, white oak, ash, some mahogany, some walnut, maple. There's a lot of variety to choose from here, and I'm just setting them out. Now there was some maple in there, but wasn't quite enough, so I did end up taking some boards that I've already ran through the jointer and planer and just took them to the miter saw and cut them to the length that I needed. And here I have all the different pieces that aren't into strips, and I'm just cutting them into strips now. Had some leftover pieces from, I think there were some tabletops and there was some little boxes I was making, so I'm just making use of all those pieces now. Some of them have been sitting in my cutoff bin for a couple of years now. Here I'm just sorting all the different pieces out, putting them to the different lengths and widths, and I'm just gonna put them in a nice random pattern so when I glue them up they'll look good. So I'm just setting all the boards out on the clamps here, and I'm using a waterproof glue, which is Type Bond 3. I've just poured them into a little paint tray and rolling them out, and I want enough glue so that I'm not going to have any seams cracking in the future, but not too much to waste the glue. I want a sufficient amount of clamps so that it's nice even pressure down the length. I've had to do quite a few glue ups here, but once I'm all done, I'm just unclamping them, setting them to the side, and I'll end up running all those boards through the jointer and then the planer. The thing about these cutting boards is that it is a very labor-intensive task, and while it does take the time, it certainly is worth it because you're going to have a really unique, beautiful looking piece that you can just leave on your countertop, and it's almost like a functional work of art all on its own. Next I bring the pieces over to the crosscut sled and I trim off that initial edge, and then I push it up against a stop block. I'm cutting them to about 1 7/8 inches because I'm looking for a final thickness of about 1 3/4 inches. Anything over about 1.5 inches is good, but I always like that extra little beefiness. If it's any thinner, I find that the boards tend to warp much easier as that moisture comes in and out of your cutting boards. And as those pieces are cut, I just flip them up on edge and you can start to see that pattern emerge. The smaller offcut pieces, I'm just running them through the fence on the table saw. I find that they're a little bit too narrow to run through the crosscut sled. And all those pieces I am just sorting out, picking a different strip, 1 or 2 from each of the different sections, and just flipping it over and just making it as random as possible. I am being conscious of any defects or cracks in the wood or face down so that no juices or possible food contaminants will get into it. These boards' final dimensions will be 12 inches by 16 inches, so I'm just putting the length here of all the different strips to a little over 16, so when I do the final dimensioning it will be right at 16. Again, the glue up is just like the other pieces, just using Type Bond 3, a paint roller with some glue, and just gluing them together. Nothing real fancy here, just taking my time and putting lots of glue in so they don't separate in the future. Just running them through the drum sander and flattening them out both sides. And here I am cutting them to the final dimension with the crosscut sled. And then I move on to the slow, long task of sanding. I start off with 60 grit, and then I move up to 100 grit from here. Next, I'm putting a juice groove into these cutting boards. Now, in the past, I've made this adjustable juice groove jig, and I'm just taking my time going around the perimeter with a 3/4 inch bowl gouge bit. And as I go, I'm just making sure that I use the vacuum just to clear out those little wood chips, because I want a nice straight line along those juice grooves. Now each pass I'm going down about 1/8 of an inch, just taking my time and taking that perimeter like before. I find that the good depth is about 3/8 of an inch in that very last pass. I go nice and quick along that edge with taking about 1/32 of an inch just to remove any burn marks. Next, I'm just using a 1/4 inch round over on the top and 1/8 round over on the bottom. And then here's the final sanding with 150 grit. I'm just taking my time going in both directions here just to remove any marks that are on the cutting board. Now, they will eventually get cut marks from knives on it, but I want to have a nice perfect finish to the customer when they receive it. I am also spraying them down with water here, and what that does is just lift that grain. So when the cutting boards are used for the first time, they won't have a fuzziness to them. So just spray them down with water and then give them a light sanding with about 220 grit. And when they first get wet, they won't have that fuzziness. And I'm just soaking my cutting boards with mineral oil.
I like to use just a Tupperware container lid just to contain it so it doesn't go all over my workbench. I want to get a really nice soak so I can just keep coming back and adding more until it's mostly soaked in. A lot of this end grain is really thirsty, so you're going to see some spots clearing up pretty quick. But I'll go ahead and I'll flip it over and just keep adding that oil. I like to give these a really good soak so that when the customer receives them, they'll won't need to be finished with oil for quite some time. So once they start washing them, it does have a tendency to lose some of that oil from those soaps. Yeah, so we'll just go ahead and do the rest. Let this one soak, and yeah, go from there.
Here I'm marking out the holes to drill for the rubber feet. I'm making sure that I use some stainless steel screws with some rubber feet. Final step is I'm just applying some beeswax mixed with mineral oil, 3 parts mineral oil and 1 part beeswax, and just buffing it out so it has a nice waxy smooth finish as that final product.
that pretty much wraps up today's video. I appreciate you watching it to the end. If you've enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care. Thanks. Bye.